All right. Thank you, Craig. This morning we have Douglas Bowers with us as our speaker. I have known Douglas for 12 or 13 years. And ever since I've known him, he's been working on a concept of identifying 7 different business personalities. And he has written a book over that period of time, and it's been a long labor of love that incorporates these business personalities. It's called We Are Alpha Dogs, and it is about dogs who all have these business personalities and how they solve problems and become legendary businessmen. It sounds a little frivolous at first, but believe me, it's not. It deals with very important concepts, and I know several of you here have read the book and you know what I'm talking about. Now, last week I gave a presentation introducing those characters, who they are, and how they work. And this week, Douglas will be taking that tool that I demonstrated, and he's going to show you how to use it and get into the nitty gritty of how our concept of the oval table, which is having all those personalities sitting at the table, all with a voice, making their input for problem solving. So that will be Doug's presentation today. And Douglas, take it away.
Thank you, Carl, and good morning, Breakfast Clubbers. This week, I want to go into a little bit more detail on the profiles and how they came about, and then we'll talk about how to use them if we have some time near the end. I do want to allow plenty of room for questions because the application of them is extremely important in your particular situation. Years ago, I set out to answer what I consider to be the biggest and perhaps the most difficult question in all of business: how to help people and organizations they inhabit realize their potential, despite the difficulties of the moment and the cloudiness of the long-term view. Now, at first glance, that might not seem that hard, but when you consider that every organization I've ever encountered is different, every department is different, every person within each of those groupings is different, things get a little bit more formidable. And if that's not difficult enough, you soon realize that all the people seem to be very different. After all, people have been people on the loading dock, those people in manufacturing, perhaps are different from the people in engineering, and those are different still from the people in accounting, sales, and of course, very different than top management. Or it seems that they're different. There is no loss of ideas out there on how to address this problem, from Dale Carnegie to Strength Finders to DISC, Myers-Briggs with their DFG or whatever results there are. The problem is that unless you are a trained psychologist or, God forbid, someone from HR, none of those approaches make any sense, nor can you remember the results, nor will people in general volunteer to take those tests. So that sets you up with a much different problem and a much more difficult thing to work with. Can you imagine the reaction of a customer or vendor when you tell them, I can't help you unless you take this written test? That simply will not work, certainly will not work on the ground. Albert Einstein said that you should make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. So we want to go ahead and try and do that for you with the profiles. So why don't we look at an example of how you can get yourself into trouble? There's no point in me telling you the answer because you will not accept the answer anyway. But if you find yourself, this might work for you. For example, let's look at the title of my presentation. You missed the meeting. What does that mean? Just 4 words. That is all you will need to find the answer. You missed the meeting. What does that really mean? Imagine if it was a normal work day for you and things have been going along just as normal. You have gone out for a late lunch and do some errands, and sit down at your desk and you find there are two emails, one from Craig and the other one from me. Craig's email says, you missed the meeting. And since you all know Craig well, you know what his email really means. Craig is really saying is, I'm sorry you missed the meeting. We hope everything is okay. If you need anything else, let us know. Hope to see you next week. I've been at this meetings long enough to know that that is pretty close to what Craig's email would say. Friendly, courteous, appreciative, good. Always happy to receive that kind of email. But my email is a little bit different from me. So you go back and you check your calendar again, and you see that my email says you missed the meeting. You check the calendar, and long about there, blood drains from your face as a sense of impending doom comes. 4 words, because the second one is for me. You understand they don't mean the same thing as they did with Craig. Here's some background for you. I'm the leader of a 7-person team who has a major project launching next Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. The team has a meeting. The team was meeting today to go over some critical information that you were to present prior to the launch. We gathered and you were not there. We waited and still you did not show. You did not call, nor did you send the information. My email really said was, are you not able to manage your calendar? Do you understand how critical your information was to us? Why would you let us down? We just wasted several $1,000s worth of labor and we got nothing back but frustration, all caused by you. My email is much different than Craig's. What you need to do to fix this is set up another meeting when all can attend, do it quickly, and give us the information we need to get back on schedule. And I would probably assign someone to help you and to make sure you're there on time, because we can't afford another screw up. I think we can all agree that Craig is a wonderful person, and I am not so wonderful. So the breakthrough is not with some complicated test. No, the breakthrough is something so simple and is so often overlooked. Here's how simple it is. There are only 2 steps and 7 flavors. Step 1 is I have to understand who I am as a person, which flavor I am. And step 2 is I have to understand who you are or which flavor you are. That's it. It's that simple. Within a given flavor, there's a high intensity and a low intensity, and there's high performing, low performing, but there's still only 7 flavors. We call our flavors emotional essences, as the emotional essence of a person. To make these flavors easy to remember, we have put people names to them, calling them the flavors a color, a number, a fish, or an instrument seems to make things way too hard. We also clearly and without reservation state that age, sex, education, and or experience does not matter as to which flavor you are. We have found that regardless of age, your sex or lack thereof, your education or your experience, the ignition switch on a tractor works the same way. Let me remind you again the names of these flavors and their principal characteristics that Carl covered last week. And going from left to right on the test panel, if you'll recall that from last week, the first dog is Stan. He's into measurement, corporate planning, strategy, nothing gets by him. Jack is a get her done dog, into production, getting things done, fixing things. I want to do things. I want to make things happen from the time I get up in the morning until the time I go to bed at night. I'm focused on production or producing things. Buster is primarily into sales. He's the life of the party, sells ideas and concepts. Big Dog is the overall leader. Translate what others say, keeper of the flame. Tracy is the heart of the organization, the emotional problem solver, ranger. You can see what could be unencumbered by what is, and Scotty is risk adverse, sees what can go wrong. Those are the 7 flavors. I mean, if you took the test last week, You have an idea of which one you are and why you're of value. Each of these dogs or emotional essences or flavors have one way of giving information, and they have one way of hearing information. Since 85% of decisions are made emotionally, it's not hard to understand that 85% or more of communication is also emotional. Thus, most of the communication between dogs and people is also emotional. When you get two of the same things talking to each other, they don't need to talk in complete sentences. For example, if you have two jacks, which are the production-oriented people, sitting there talking to another, they might have a conversation that goes somewhat like this. Do you know what they want me to do? Yeah, I know, just crazy. They just don't get it. Now, if you're an observer of this conversation, there's no facts, there's nothing going on there that you can understand. But between two jacks, they understand completely what's happening. They understand the conversation. They talk in partial sentences. Or you might have a situation where Scotty and Jack are talking, and Scotty says, I am really concerned. Jack says, will you relax? I've not fixed everything yet. They both know there's a list. They both know there's something to do. And Scotty is concerned about it, but Jack is not, because Jack will fix things later. And since many of you are in sales, let me give you a sales example that you can use. Let's say a friend of yours comes over and says, my friend Bill needs a 50,000 square foot building, truck high dock, certain electrical requirements, certain other things about the building. And you're the realtor and you're going to go make the presentation. So what you want to do is say, who is he? Now, you don't need his background. You don't need a lot of things about him. All you need to know is, which dog is he? So if I tell you he's a Jack, you say, thank you very much. That's all I need to know. And you go over and you make an appointment. You walk in and you say, hi, how are you? By the way, you roll the plans out on the table. Here's a 50,000 square foot building, truck high dock, and the other electrical requirements that you wanted. Once you've done that, you have gotten his attention because he is a Jack. He's a production-oriented person. You come in there with a production-oriented example and situation to solve his problem. If he was a Scotty, for example, so he's risk adverse, you have a much different situation. And what you have is someone who's concerned about the problems of what's going to happen if he buys a building. So you're going to walk in there with the plans. You're going to leave them rolled up on the corner of the desk or on the floor. And you're going to say, you know, if I were you, I would have some concerns about doing this, about buying a building. My concerns would be X, Y, and Z. Scotty already has X, Y, and Z in his head. What you have to do is check them off. So he knows that you appreciate him, you understand where he's coming from, and now he's open to looking at something else because you have talked to him in his language. You have heard back what he has to say on his what he has to say in terms of the situation. Let's consider another example. Let's say that we have two spouses who are teachers who have drugged their collective husbands over to a Christmas party. And during the course of the party, these two teachers notice that their husbands are off in the corner talking to each other. And they notice that they've spent the entire evening talking to each other. And so they wonder, how can these people have any fun at all? They're not mingling. They're not talking to other people. What are we going to do? So we get them in the car, and the teacher wife says, do you have a good time? Oh, I had a great time. He and I were talking off about stuff, and, you know, we had just a fantastic time. And she's wondering, how could you have a fantastic time when you're just talking to one guy? Well, they were talking Jack to each other, talking about production, problems of production, whatever, talking Jackness to each other. And so they were thrilled by that opportunity because they were in their own world, talking to each other. So the first step in building a relationship with someone is to make a connection. And the first step in making a connection is to make an emotional connection. At our Oval Table podcast, we asked the guest, how do you make a connection with someone? and the person said, I walk over and say, excuse me, but you win the prize as being the best dressed gentleman. An emotional connection has nothing to do with the suit, has nothing to do with tailoring, has nothing to do with anything else. As long as it's not a black suit with pink socks, it still is. We are making an emotional connection. There's no facts, absolutely no facts. By the way, if you're a speaker in a group of 100 or more, there are multiples of every one of these dogs in the room. And the only way you're going to get your message across is to speak to each of them, even if you have to say things 7 different ways, the same fact, 7 different ways. As an accountant, and Arlen may appreciate this, you have a husband and wife in front of you and you're working on a tax return. And he's a buster. He's all in favor of, let's go get him. Yeah, let's do great things. And the wife is not so much. So then you propose that, why don't we set up an IRA, take some money out of a savings account and transfer it to an IRA, get a deduction for doing absolutely nothing. And the fact that you're over 59 and a half, you can draw it back out without a penalty. And he's all enthusiastic. And she says, no, the last time we tried one of your harebrained ideas, nothing worked and things went badly. So you've got yes and no in front of you. And so the problem is you have to tell yes and no 2 different things. You have to tell yes, the same answer, but you have to change the language in order for the second person to get it. A relationship creates with another person creates a sense of knowledge. If you ask your spouse, for example, what would you like for dinner? And they say, I don't care. It doesn't mean they want a large plate of escargot and a cream sauce, but rather a range of what they might like. And so that relationship over time gets built to where you have a set of knowledge with them and you can do various things. The other thing that tends to happen is that as the relationship builds from the initial connection and then more connection, then a relationship builds. Once that relationship is in place, one person can say something stupid and it won't kill the relationship. Whereas if this is an initial connection, it will kill the relationship. Because the other person will say, well, that was kind of stupid, wasn't it? Yeah, okay, I made a mistake there. It was kind of stupid. So, and you can go on and you will continue to exist with that relationship. So I suppose you might be asking, where is all this going to go? And how is this going to go to something that's going to be tremendous down the road and be effective of other people? So how is this going to work? The ultimate goal of the profiles and the oval table and all the other things that are related to it is simply to change the dinner table conversation. The dinner table conversation goes like this. We have mom and dad sit down for dinner with their 2 kids. And dad says, I had a terrible day at work today. They didn't listen. They didn't do what they're supposed to do. And, nothing but trouble. And then mom starts in with the same way and says, I had a terrible day at work today. What you have is these 2 kids getting every day, it's terrible at work. Work is terrible. I don't want to do that in my lifetime. If you change that conversation, and this is where the importance comes, you change the conversation so that when dad sits down, he says, I had a great day at work today. We launched a rocket. And man, was that fun. See that thing take off and do something. And mom says, well, I had a great day at work today too, because we did something else. We solved a problem for a customer. And the kids will say, wow, I could go into work. I could do something great too. And the precocious kid's going to say, well, if my dad can do it, I can kill it because, I can set up a VCR. I'm smarter than he is. I can really make something go. I can do something positive. So then what happens is the 2 kids go off to a friend's house and they're having dinner there. And dad starts in with the harangue about I had a terrible day at work. And mom does the same thing. And the kid pops up and says, you ought to talk to my dad because you don't have to live like that. And the dad will say, well, what's he smoking? He said, well, no, he's not smoking anything. You ought to give him a call. When you make that shift, you change the generation, and you change the generation after generation, and everything works at a much different level and a much more important level. And that's what all of this is about, is to change that conversation between two people. And you change it by setting up the connection, the profile, so we can understand who you are, and I can talk to you in your language. Basically, if you have a person that is making these kinds of statements, and you're out here and you're doing this and you're all around, this person is not going to ever communicate with this person. It's not going to happen. Whereas if you realize that the other person is whichever dog he is, and then you change your conversation to match his, now you have a connection, and connection after connection builds a relationship. And that's when everything starts to change. The other thing you can do with the profiles, once you've got those set, is you can change the playing field. And in an organization, that's extremely important, is to change the playing field where they are. So what you do is you set up an oval table. And around this oval table, you have 7 characters. You have one of each of the 7 flavors, each of the 7 emotional essences sitting around the table. And then when you take a problem and you put it in the center of the table, what happens is that everyone around that table gets lost in that problem. All they can do is think about that problem, and they interact with each other on that basis, and they find solutions on that basis. And then when they propose a solution that they can go out and test, and they go out and test it, and they find out that solution is working, they come back and that becomes the game plan that they're going to do. What you do create in your organization is buy-in. And buy-in is an extremely hard thing to get. If you're the owner of the business, say, I want you to do this. I want to have pink Cadillacs, and we want everybody to buy a pink Cadillac. You know that's not going to work. So why don't we go out and test it? We go out and test, and we find out that no, it doesn't work. Nobody wants a pink Cadillac other than Mary Kay. And so you have to make a change. And that moves an organization forward so that all the people at the table buy into the answer, because it's their answer. It's not your answer, it's their answer. And then you move forward that way. The oval table becomes empowering. It empowers the people that sit there. It empowers each of the persons that bring a voice. And you could have people that have been overridden by other people in the past, that have where people have said, look, this is my department. Nobody talks to my people except through me. And you do what I tell you to do, and we'll participate if we feel like it. You get these people who have silos, and they become obstacles to progress. You can't do that sitting at a table with the other 6 people, because they will call you out on that. They will drill down on you with that, and you will have to make a change. So once you start making changes like that, then the organization starts to take off, and it becomes a tremendously valuable thing. If you've listened to the Oval Table podcast, for example, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're inviting voices to come to the table, to bring something to the table that matters, and they're discussing things from their perspectives. And those perspectives are incredibly enriching to those people who are listening. And if you listen to all the podcasts, you find out there's a theme running through them. We don't advocate a theme for anybody. We don't tell people what to say. We don't edit what they say. But they come in with, it's a people first business. And we start with people. If I'm going to come into an organization, as one person said, I'm going to start with the people. And from the people, I'm going to make things happen. So if it's a people business, if people is the way to make things happen, why don't you start your management process with the people? And you start with the people by getting to know them. You get to know who they are and how they think and what kinds of skills they're good at. And as long as you're doing it, why don't you focus on the positives of people? Why don't you focus on the things that are really good about people, really good about that particular person? If you were going to, for example, conduct a track event for Special Olympics, and you've got certain things you've got to get done, how are you going to get those done yourself? You aren't going to get them done because you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you don't have the money, you don't have all the assets. but collectively you do, because you can bring somebody to the table. We need somebody to sell tickets. We need somebody to encourage people to come. That's Buster. We need somebody to set the place up so that we can function. That's Jack. Jack's not going to sell tickets, but Jack will get the place set up. We need somebody to worry about what could go wrong, and that's Scotty. We need somebody to organize the entire event from a strategy standpoint, and that's Stan. And we need somebody to run the organization in general, make sure everything's functioning, and that's you. That's Big Dog. And we need somebody to dream it up. What could it be? What could this event be like if we really got behind it? And that's Ranger, because Ranger's not concerned with what is, he's only concerned about what could be. And then we need somebody at the end of the line to congratulate the kids for being there and cheer them on. And that's Tracy. So you have these 7 different attributes, and you have 7 different people that can come together and can make something truly happen and truly special happen. And you can do it in any organization. You can do it across any kind of theory you want to do. And the oval table is run, our oval table is run exactly the same way. And so we would encourage you to change the way you think about people, change the way you think about management and organizations, and instead start with the profiles. And then from the profiles, change the playing field by going to the oval table, and then let the oval table shine. Let the oval table become what it can be. And it will make a tremendous difference to you and a tremendous difference in your organization. Does anyone have any questions about how you can make a difference here?
I see Antonio has his hand up.
Go for
it. So Doug, terrific presentation. Thank you so very much. I think this is a really important topic for building consensus and for being able to look at your blind spots. Having a whole team of people who are looking at things from different angles makes such a meaningful difference to productivity. And I work with a lot of startups and a lot of small businesses that have a narrow focus in some ways here, and they're missing gaps. And as a result, they have difficulties, financial difficulties, sales difficulties, productivity difficulties. How do you promote these kind of people that you're looking for? How do you take these concepts? If you're trying to hire people like this or engage people like this to join your team, how would you promote something like that to attract the different members of the team? What are the kind of the call outs that these people would like to be to engage with you so that you can bring on this complete type of team, if that makes sense?
What you're looking to do is in your organization, well, there's a famous author who says that you want to put the right people in the right seats on the bus. Okay. The problem with a closely held organization is you're working with the people that get off that bus because they're frequently your relative, your wife, or whatever. And so you just can't simply change people out. You know, you have to work with who's there. What you want to try and do is identify who is the best of each one. I don't care what their job title is. I don't care how long they've been there. I don't care about any of that stuff. What I care about is who is the best Buster, who's the best Jack, who's the best whatever, and sit them around the table, and then stop being a dictatorial manager who says it's my way or the highway. That kills everything. Don't do that. Sit there and allow people to be who they are and allow people to bring forth their ideas. And when you get these meetings, it's the first ones are going to be messy, because if you've been a dictatorial leader, no one wants to say anything. So you sit down and say, how can we make our business better? And sit there and be quiet and let them speak. The first meeting, if you've been training them not to think, then it's going to be a very quiet meeting. It's going to be crickets. But on the second meeting, you start the same way. How can we make this business better? And somebody's going to start popping off about something and saying something. And when you find out that there's no downside to that, then the third meeting, everybody's going to be hands in, and it's going to be bedlam. And that's exactly what you want to happen. You want the ideas and experiences that are resonant in people to come forward. And you bring them forward by finding the best 7 you can find in your organization. And if you're missing somebody, you can hire some of them. You can hire the lawyer, you can hire the accountant, you can bring those in. But you can't bring in, you have to hire Tracy. Tracy has to be resident in the program because she's the heart and soul of the operation. And you try and put them together and let them speak. And that's pretty much how you have to go about it. And remember, the focus is on the goodness of people, not the shortcomings. There's no point in focusing on shortcomings because nothing's going to happen. And then you try and make it so that everybody is a participant in that meeting. Everybody gets to say whatever they want to say, good or bad, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Just say it. And the ideas will sort themselves out over time. Does that answer your question?
That was a masterclass in facilitating, so that really helps. My maybe to get one little step closer to this is if I'm trying to advertise that I want people of the certain types of traits on my team, should I just apply these insights into my advertisement, into my promotional copy? I'm looking for a Tracy. I'm not specifically, so literally, but it makes me think like if I'm trying to hire like a hiring manager of some sort, I would make a specific type of ad that would appeal to a Tracy or appeal to a Jack or appeal to a Stan or what have you. Does that, I can see how you can make very specific types of pitches to each one of those types to attract them rather than a generic, I'm hiring.
I think given the hiring rules and advertisement rules and things of that nature, you have to kind of tread carefully. And you're going to, if you're trying to find a production manager, for example, you're looking for a Jack and you've advertised for a production manager because that kind of wording will probably bring out a Jack. I think what you want to do is have this sitting on your desk. And you're starting an interview and you're going to sit there and you're going to look at that listing of what they've done, that resume. You're going to look at that for a few minutes and they're going to want to say something. They're going to want to do something to break the ice. And they're going to say, what is that? What's this? Say, oh, some friend of mine brought that by, you know. Then you go through the test wording and you say, is there a dog there that appeals to you? Is there one that kind of says, hi, how are you? It has nothing to do with the breed of dog, nothing to do with the dog you might have at home. It's just whatever dog kind of talks to you. And when they pick one, then you know who they are, you know what their focus is, and then you can start drilling in on that as a way of making the conversation go and find the right person. The table will insist that all 7 are there. And you might not see them, but the table will insist on it. And let the table do that. Because the table is going to be running the organization. And not some seating chart, not some listing of who's who in the business. But the people at the table are going to run that business. Let them go. Let them do it. And you'll find out that the degree of enthusiasm at the table is a great deal higher than it otherwise would be. Craig Federighi of Apple, who's head of Apple programming, said that if you're trying to develop a new product, what you want to do is get a diverse bunch of people sitting around a table and let them talk. And that's exactly what the Oval Table does. It's a little more structured, it's a little more purposeful than that, but still, that's exactly what the Oval Table is designed to do.
Thanks so much, Doug. Great job.
Doug, how did you end up choosing the 7 dogs? What was the backing on that and the thinking?
Well, I worked for quite a long time at trying to figure out what the attributes were of these 7. And conveniently, they're the 7 areas in a business that you need to do: corporate planning, production, sales, etc. And so then I designed a set of attributes that fit each of those characters. And then I was stuck on colors, and I went for months without trying to figure out how to come up with something because I knew it wasn't going to be a saxophone. It wasn't going to be any of that kind of nonsense. And so then one day I went to my barber and I was having a haircut, and he said, "Have you seen the calendar that my daughter made for my wife for Christmas?" I said, "No. I mean, how would I have seen it? You know?" And he brings it out, and there's a picture of Buster sitting there. Buster had his glasses on. He has a boxer and a little martinis in the top corners. I said, "You know what? My haircut's done. I need to go to the store and make a copy of this. I'll drop it by your house." And so I immediately left and went and got, and after that, all the dog pictures fell into place. And that's how they came about. And how the book came about is also strange, that they would wake me up and they would say, "Write this down." I said, "I'm sleeping here." I said, "We don't care. We're not sleeping. Write this down." I have to go to the bathroom. I said, "Well, take us with you. Start writing this down." And all they did is talk from one event to the other. And all I did was write it down. And and that's exactly how the oval table happens. You don't know where it's going when you start, but it's going in a lot better place than you otherwise would if you didn't have that table.
So it's a very creative process, it sounds like.
I did an oval table for a group of people at Panda Restaurants. And when I called out, I want Buster here, I want Jack here, whatever. And I didn't say who would sit there, but they would gravitate toward that table. They would jump to sit at that table. And I said, "We ought to work on a problem. What should we work on?" "I don't know. What should we work on?" And they came up with a problem, set it in the table, and their eyes never left the table after that. All they did is focus on finding answers to that problem. And they came up with answers, and they weren't expensive answers. They were cheap answers. They were just little things we can do to make a difference. And then we had a manager sitting there, a multiple level up manager sitting there, and we have a line server sitting there. And the line server says, "I'd like to be like you someday." And the manager says, "No, you don't. I want to be just like you sitting at the table." That is a sea change in the way management thinks. And that's the sea change you need to have happen in order to get the ideas to surface. Because frequently the answer to a problem is not found at the top level. It's found with Sally way down in an organization who knows somebody who knows somebody. That's where the answers typically lie. And you have to get to that level. And you get to that level with an oval table.
What other questions do we have for Doug this morning? I can't see everybody's tiles, so you'd have to speak out or show your hand.
All right, well, I'm putting my hand up because I have to get ready to go out for breakfast with my friend. Great program. And I love how you were talking about the table makes the decisions. I know that I always say logic makes you think, emotion makes you act. But where did you get the 87% emotion from?
Oh, I think it's closer to 95%, but
Really?
out of observation, typically a CEO will say, "I want to do this." And then they would call in a quant guy to justify it, but the decision's already been made. "I want to do a certain thing." But they can't say, "I just want to do it because I want to do it." And that doesn't work. You have to have some kind of a logic behind it. So they call a quant guy in to develop the logic for it. But
Okay, thanks.
you know what logic is there behind "I want French toast for breakfast"? And there's no logic to that. But there is a desire for that. There's an emotional need for that. And so that's what you're going after, is those emotions. And as a speaker, by the way, if you've got 100 people in the room, you've got all 7 of those characters in there. And you're not going to get your message across unless you say it 7 different ways. Because what will happen is a person will come back from a meeting and they say, "Well, how was that?" "Oh, it was great." It was great because he heard one thing. He heard his one thing. Same thing, 7 different ways, but he heard his one message. And that's what he takes away with them. So you've got to be conscious that they're there. You have to ferret them out, and you have to speak to them. Because that's all they're going to hear anyway, is their language.
I'm just curious, Doug, is there like let's say you're a speaker, you're giving a presentation to 100 people, and knowing that the audience is going to have those different attributes as part of their group, do you have a series, like a system where you kind of present topics to apply to the different personalities in a particular order, or does it really matter?
I don't think it matters what order you're presenting in, as long as you do present the message to those 7, because remember, they're sitting there, they only hear one thing. So
Right.
if you're proposing something, you're going to say, now, of course, there are risks with this. And Scotty's got his ears on because you're talking his language, you're talking risk. If you want to say, how are we going to go about this? The only guy who knows that is Jack, and he knows how to get it done. He doesn't know what to do, but he knows how to get it done. Just get out of the way. And you're expressing it in these different ways. And what will happen is that they will raise their hand. Not actually raise their hand, but they will raise their hand by the way they move, by the way they sit and don't sit still in the seat anymore. They put the phone down, because once they know you're talking to them, then it's just you and them. It's not a big organization. It's just you and them. And then you see who they are, and then you call them out. And you say, well, Scotty, what do you think, Scotty? And you can see them in the audience because they're responding to you in different ways. And you figure out who they are, and then you ask them to participate.
I'm just curious if Patricia has a system like this already.
She might have left that breakfast with her.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, additional questions.
Well, let me tell you that it is difficult as a manager to sit at the table sometimes, because you're used to saying, what I think, everybody agrees with me. And that's absolutely wrong. If you think you're the smartest guy at the table, you've got a problem. And person after person who sat at our oval table has said exactly the same thing. You're not the smartest guy in the room. Collectively, you're the smartest people in the room, because 2 heads and 4 hands are always better than 1 head and 2 hands. So when we went to produce the book cover, this cover here, we had 156 submissions in a contest. 156. We got to eliminate a bunch of them because they were cartoons, and I said specifically not to have cartoons. So the cover I picked, I thought, wow, this is a good picture. I like this cover. No one liked it. Not a single person. My own daughter didn't like it, for crying out loud. Nobody liked what I picked. And so what they did is they centered in on this cover. Right or wrong, they centered in on this cover. So the smart thing to do is go out and test it. So I went out and tested. I laid a bunch of books on a table and asked people, what do you think? And they said, oh, I'll look at this one. Nah, not this one, not this one. But that one on the screen there, I'd look at that one. So the test came back hot. It wasn't my hot. It was the table's hot. And so then I had to go with what the table had to say. And it's turned out to be hot ever since. It's not me. It's not me. It's the table speaking. And the table's collective wisdom is far smarter and far sharper than mine. And so you want to set up an organization in which you can let that table run. And you'll go in directions you didn't think of beforehand, but it'll be a better direction than what you were thinking as a manager. Because the collective wisdom is smarter than the individual wisdom. I know we don't like to say that. We like to say, man, I've been in business 40 years and I've done this and that and the other thing, whatever. But that doesn't mean you're right. Because we oftentimes revere the mountain man, the guy who's been able to be in the cabin all by himself and survive the winter. But what if you took him and put him in a group of people? How much better would it be? How much more would he accomplish if he did it that way? Far more than being in that cabin by yourself and hunting and fishing over the winter. So we have to empower ourselves. We have to empower people. And the test works, the profile works, whether you're a little kid or you're an adult, it doesn't matter. And once you bring that test out, they get lost in it. And when they get lost in it, that's when the wisdom surfaces. So you're empowering them to be who they are. You're not asking to be somebody else. You're empowering them to be who they are. Try doing that by saying that. It won't work. But if you let it happen, it will work. Does anyone else have a question or a comment or a situation they'd like to discuss? Because
Doug,
we're
this is
wide open. Gary,
Yeah, as a speaker and presenter, I appreciate your commenting about reading the body language of your audience to begin to understand where they may fit. But I'm wondering also, is there specific languaging or phrases that would attract the attention or get the attention of each of these 7 types?
yeah, there is. Let's, for example, let's take my brother as an example. He's a jack, so he's production oriented. I mean, that's all he is. He's nothing else. I mean, it's production day from day in the morning till night. That's all he does is production. He's a production manager, actually. So he's in the right slot. So if his wife would say, you know, the day after Thanksgiving, there's a sale at Macy's. Can you come help me pick up a sweater? Nah, I'm sorry. He's going to be busy. He's going to find something else to do. If I call him up and say, you know, Rockler's having a sale on tools. Okay, what time is it? Because you're talking his language. His language is production. Or you have Scotty there whose language is risk. And so you say, you know, there's problems here. Well, Scotty knows there's problems. And you start clicking him off, and he's with you now. He's with you. He's moving with you. So you pulled him in. You pulled Jack in. And then you pull in each of the others. And all of a sudden, you've got all 7 of them. So you've got a lot to handle as a speaker. Because you got 7 different people talking to you at the same time. And you're talking to them at the same time. But you're only talking in their language because they don't understand anything else. It takes a gifted person to be able to switch languages. And you can't do that. And I know you can do that. I know Patricia can do that. But generally speaking, people don't. And so that's really how you do it. And when you present it a certain language, certain people will pop. They will fidget in the chair. So they're saying, that's who I am. And so then you go and pick up the rest of them the same way. Then all of a sudden, you've got everybody fidgeting in chairs. And that's exactly where you want them to be, moving with you. Even in the most esoteric topic called estate tax exemptions, still get them moving. You can still do it. Because on that issue, everybody has something to gain. I mean, if you're a family farm, it saves a family farm. I mean, if we're crying out loud, let's start thinking about this a little bit. You know, and everybody has something to benefit based on an idea. And you sell the benefits of the idea in their language. Because that's what they care about.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have a great opportunity with the holidays here for us to practice this very topic.
Well, speaking of that, I at one time I was selling these cards, and in the cards is the background. And I sold some to one person, and she comes back to me about 3 months later and says, you know, I took those cards to my family Christmas party. Boy, was that a hoot. You got everybody jumping, and I know who you are. Yeah, no, I'm not. Oh, yes, you are. And they're going. So you've elevated the emotions in the room to now they're all excited. They're not thinking about something else. They're thinking about what's going on right in front of them. And so then they're talking and grabbing back and forth. And that's when you find the gold. It's when you allow that kind of thing to happen. So you have to set that up. You set that up with the profiles and the oval table. Now let the table run. It is amazing what will happen.
How can I get my hands on a set of those cards, by the way?
I thought exactly.
When I spoke to a group once, I said, I have these cards. This is how I did it. I have these cards. I had no cards. I mean, talk to the hand. I had these cards. And out of 200 people, I probably sold 80 sets of the cards. And I didn't have change in the back. I didn't have anything. I had some people taking names down. I mean, it was craziness. But it gives them the information. It's the same thing as this. It's just in a different format. And if you have that profile in your head, and then you're talking to somebody and you're saying, who is this person? And you listen to the language that they say. They're going to talk about production. They're going to talk about whatever their key is. Once you find that, then you just talk to them that way. And then they'll say, where have you been all my life? Now you know you're spot on. And if you go and look at them, you might say, well, I don't know exactly who they are, but they're one or two. They're this one or that one. You ask another question, you tailored it on, then you're game on. And that's how it works.
Doug, you can, why don't you give people your email address so that they can contact you to get cards? And also, when Douglas gives you his email address, it tells you something about him and which character he is.
My email address is that so at pacbell, PACBELL.net. And if you send your address to that email address, I will send you a free book back. So it's a win-win for you. But, I'm a Stan and Gary's a Stan. So we're strategically oriented, we're measurement oriented, we're focused on that kind of thing. So when you tell an accountant something, he's wondering, is that really true? I mean, he's not calling you out on that, but he's saying, is that true? And you ask it again in a different way. You try to ask for some collateral information and you work it around to find out whether that's true or not. And so, is that so? It's exactly the way an accountant thinks. And I'm telling you, look at Gary, and he's laughing there because, it's spot on. That's his mechanism. That's how he copes with the world, is wondering, is this really true? Does this make sense? Does this work? When you talk to a Buster doesn't care about anything else other than what he thinks. And so Buster says, well, why should I like this? Well, you should like it because I like it. And that's the only reason, that's the only logic Buster has is I like it. You should like it because I like it. Come on, give it a try. This is wonderful. And Buster's going on about, himself and what he thinks, and walks into a room and he's the life of the party. I'm here. Let's go. How does Pitch Freak come in? Pitch Freak, he tells you exactly who he is because he comes into the screen, right? Because he's not trying to hide from you. He's not trying to say, I better not say anything because people might not like it. No, he's right there. He's already told you he's a Buster, so just talk Busterness to him. And Craig's laughing because Craig is a Stan and somewhat of a Buster combo.
We saw it happen last week with Derek Arden. Derek Arden is all about negotiating. His life is negotiating. And when we were talking about the various characters, he said, oh, I don't know. I think, I kind of like Stan. I don't know if I'm a Stan. And I'm thinking, you're a negotiator. Of course you're a Stan. Every word you say is strategic. You're trying to elicit things from the other side. And people are very often surprised by what character they identify with unknowingly.
Some people have a problem assigning somebody a character, and what you want to do is allow them to make the choice. Don't make the choice for them. I was at a conference, and this guy tests my wife, and I go over and look at her, and she's got a minister's collar on. I thought, oh, crying out loud! I've got a problem now. So I give her the test, and she picks Buster, the sales guy. And I said, oh man, I'm in trouble here. So I say who Buster is, and she says, oh no, that's exactly what I do. I sell ideas and concepts. Okay, we're on now. Let's go.
Well, here's what I sent this to Carl last week. I think I lean toward Tracy, but there are some of those that are mixed breeds. So we have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Oh, there's a song like that. I just forgot the words. So here's the other thing. It does depend on the situation as to which part of Susan gets to show. Will we do the Chicago part? Or will we do the Marin part? There's a mix,
because
and I think we have to accept all of who we are and how we react in every situation. Did I call myself a mixed breed? I can't remember, Carl, but I remember writing you that.
Yes, yes. And
our
the
ex-
idea that different breeds come out at different times. One will dominate, one that you're really good at, but all the others are there.
There are a couple of things to remember here, that about half the people are one dog and one dog only, all day, every day. And they're easy to deal with because they don't have a multiple personality. About half the people are two. So you could be two dogs. One's going to be more dominant than the other, but you can be two. For example, you could be a ranger saying, you ought to build a website that might look like this. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And if you're a jack, you're actually able to execute on it. In my experience, and this has been tested well over 400 times, I've only found 3 women college professors who claim to be 3. It's the
We're
only time.
civil.
Well, these women college professors. So then you're on the spot of having to ask, well, is it this one? This is one, this one, this was what this one's like. And they say, yeah. So realize what the odds here are. The odds are 1 in 7 that you're going to be right with one dog. With 2 dogs, you're down around 5% to be right. And then with 3 dogs, you're down below 2% to be right. And when you're consistently right with it, you have to sit back and say, I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works, but it works. I'm going to go with that. And of course, that's a Stan approach. Go with what works. If it's not working, try something else. I mean, that's what Stans are, but, drives some people nuts, but, that's the way they are. But each of the dogs drives some other dog nuts. That's okay, because it's that collective stimulation that makes it possible for things to happen.
I think you raised a great point there, because it's like, it takes all of us to, as a body, to, really have true wisdom. But even though there may be certain people that you contrast with, it's still important to consider everybody's thoughts. I'm looking at the clock. It's 11 o'clock right now. I think it's a good time for us to jump off the call, but I just wanted to say, Douglas, thanks again for your presentation today. That was fantastic.
Fabulous.
It was wonderful.
Fabulous.
And Carl, thank you for introducing Doug. And I appreciate your book. We Are Alpha Dogs. And if you guys haven't read it yet, then go to the website and take the dog quiz first. And if you don't already know, and then read the book. It's a great parable. And Carl was right. There is so much. It's deceivingly simple. It's really, you could look through it but there's a lot between the lines, a lot. So read the book. Well, thanks again, everybody. I'm going to end the recording,